It is Monday, February 12th, 2024. I call this meeting of the Needham Design Review Board to order. I'm the board chair, Mark Lusing. I would like to confirm that all members and applicants are present and can be heard. So members, when I call your name, please respond. Bob Dermody,
Here.
Steve Dornbush,
Here.
Susan Upton.
Here.
And I don't see Felix, so that's okay. Also attending is Clay Hutchinson, our town staff support. Applicants on the agenda, 1004 Great Plain Ave, Union Pharmacy.
Here.
Matt, hi. 50 Chestnut Street, Middlesex Bank.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay. And 945 Great Plain Ave, Blue Lotus Healing Arts. Okay. And Needham Hone Committee, the planning director, Lee Newman, will be giving us an update at the end of the meeting. And I see she's here, but she said she'd be willing to let us go through the other agenda items so that we can have a longer discussion on that progress of that work and any participation they might need from our committee. Welcome to this open meeting of the Needham Design Review Board, which is being conducted remotely, consistent with state orders. The orders allow public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For this meeting, the Needham Design Review Board is convening by Zoom app as posted on the town's website and the Design Review Board page, identifying how the public may join. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this board are available on the town's website. Public is encouraged to follow along. And using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Please note this meeting is being recorded. Please be aware that other people can see you and take care not to screen share your computer unless the chair approves. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. I'd like to review the remote meeting procedures for tonight's meeting. I will introduce each applicant on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will take comments or questions from the Design Review Board members. After discussion, each vote will be by roll call vote. A copy of your application, stamped and noted for the type of approval that it receives, will be emailed to you by the DRB support staff after the meeting. That can then be attached to your building permit application. And we will now start with the first item on the agenda. First item tonight is a continuation of a special permit application by Union Pharmacy at 1004 Great Plain Avenue for more than the allowed number of signs. Matt, you want to update us as to what, I think when we continued the meeting, it was you were going to confer with your clients regarding the possibility of only getting approval for 2 signs and which 2 signs that might be, and you may have had other discussions with them. So why don't you update us on where you are?
Yeah, we were talking about the window sign or upper sign, little smaller size. And then I talked to customer, and then they didn't like the idea about the window sign because a little bit insider, and they're not visible that much. And then we reduced the size in the pretty much 15-inch by 95 inches, same proportionate, same logo and lettering, and then the small proportionate. And then I sent to the design review Alex Lee, and then possibly you guys have it also. If it's not, I can share the screen what I have over here.
Yeah, we didn't get anything in time. It wasn't by the end of her workday, so we did not receive anything. With what I asked Mehmet to do was to do a Photoshop of that particular sized, there we go, sign in that location.
Yeah, this is a sign. We're gonna make it between 2 lights, very small proportionate, and then was 22 by 140 inches. Now is 15 inch by 95 inches.
Okay. And if you all have last meeting's information, or if you recall that, we had reviewed the signs. A couple of the conditions were under that logo. It had Newton Corner or Newtonville. We changed that to Needham.
Yeah.
We've done some things. We had a couple of questions on positioning of the signs over the windows. And so I would open up. Do you have any other imagery of the other signs?
Yes, sir. Let me, you
You
mean,
do the two sides, yeah. Oh, that's great. So give us that whole page. So those are the proposals. Those other signs were 24 by
140 inches,
40.
22 by 140 inches.
So again, he's by right, he can have the two signs, whether it's Great Plain Ave and Chestnut Street. He can have one on the corner and one on one side, or he can have one on the street side and the other on the street side. It's and then the special permit would be for having a third sign, whichever one the designation seems to be. So that's perfect, Matt. If you could just leave that, that's fine. So I will open up the discussion. Bob, do you have any further questions or comments?
Unmute. There we go. No, I do not. The light's going to remain,
The light will stay there, yeah.
and will they be used?
I don't know, possibly yes.
Okay. No, no further questions at this time, Mark.
Okay. Steve?
No real questions at this time.
Okay, Susan?
Nothing from me.
All right, well, I guess I still I think one of the takeaways from last week, which he has responded to, was that if they wanted a sign over that door, it needed to be smaller. Are people comfortable approving? Again, I don't think you can see the other two signs anytime you see the sign over the door. So I don't, and it's the only door to the place. So I don't feel like it's a strong need to identify that door. Felix did note at our last meeting that historically there has been 3 signs on this corner building.
Well,
So
Yeah, how much smaller is the proposed sign over the door than the signs over the two sides?
it's,
Can I talk? Side sign is 22 by 140. Entering door sign is 15 inch by 95, almost half.
Okay.
it's 9 inches shorter and
All right, well, that helps.
45 inches long, less long, so proportionally, it's about 60% of the other two.
may I ask a question
Yeah.
or a comment? Just funny, I drove by there today and I was kind of coming from different angles, and with the two signs on each side, you can see it no matter which way you come from, you know it's Union Pharmacy. I mean, I can go along with a third sign because it's smaller, but I don't believe it's really necessary to identify it. It's not, they're missing out on any visual angle. Someone seeing this, what's there. So I just don't think, even though I know there were 3 signs there, but there were also, they had been there forever. We all loved Harvey's. It was part of Needham. So we just sort of accepted it. But even, that was a little overkill.
Okay. Susan, any other comments?
Not really, no.
Okay, well, I guess,
Mark?
yeah, Bob, go
Yeah,
ahead.
thanks. Yeah, is there anything being proposed for the door? Like, will there be signage on the door at all?
That's just store hours, sir.
Sorry?
Store hours, operation hours, we write in, like what time they are opening, what time closing.
Hours of operation, Bob.
Okay, so because I could suggest, again, I think I was the one who suggested trying where the neon open sign is. They didn't like that, fine. Didn't think it was appropriate, that's fine. But maybe if right on the door, which a lot of businesses do, and then put the hours right under it, you wouldn't need the sign on the wall above it. I don't know if if the owner or the applicant is amenable to that.
Well, that's always an option for them, as long as they're under 20, the 2 square feet and 25% of that door panel.
True, but I would be concerned that they would do that and have the sign above it. So they'd
Yeah.
have, there'd be 4 places you'd see the name.
Yeah, I think Steve covered it pretty well. I don't really see that we need that sign over the door either. But one of the questions last time, Mehmet, was that you weren't sure if they were only going to have 2 signs where they would want them. I mean, you can hear our recommendation is that it's well covered by the Great Plain Avenue elevation and the Chestnut Street elevation. But you have 2 signs, and we've had applicants choose to put one on one street side and one on the angled corner if they had an angled corner. I wouldn't recommend it, but that's an option for you. So did you discuss that with your client?
Yes, sir. They don't want see on the window because a little bit insider and they're not visible that much. And then it is, okay if they want to see what I am proposing right now.
Okay. All right, well,
I mean,
I'm going to start with the 2. The other issue here, Mehmet, if I could have the screen back, please. So if you could stop sharing, I want to show the board or something else.
Okay.
All right, thank you. I went back to the last week's presentation and let me get the right week here. It's not what I'm be sharing. Hold on. You can see this brick coursing above these windows. There's a roll-lock, what we call a roll-lock course. There's a standard course and there's 2 soldier courses. That is continuous around all the sides and the entrance. So all that brick course. So, one thing I want to do is suggest that we find the location that that we get those all in the same position relative to the building brickwork. And if we don't approve the sign over the door, then that one was the troublesome one because the light fixtures were there. So I guess I would like to dispose of the sign over the door first. So I would.
I mean, I don't know. I'm torn on this one. There are 3 signs there.
Never reviewed or approved by the town.
Oh, duly noted. Thank you. Then, yeah, I just, I don't think it's necessary to have that 3rd one over the door.
Okay, so in the latest package for today, we had 3 drawings that he sent us. So I'm going to refer to those. They're not necessarily the same notations as the first presentation, but I will rely on the one today. So facade A, which is the reduced sign over the front entrance. I'm gonna ask for a positive motion, and then if you don't want to approve it, say no, and if you agree to approve it, say yes. So I would take a motion to approve the sign A as proposed over the entrance.
So moved.
Susan, can you second for us? Or Steve?
I second the motion, sorry.
Right, and we come to the vote. Bob,
I'm gonna vote no.
Steve,
Not approved.
Susan,
No,
and the chair is no. Okay, on sign. The other two signs, Bob, as you noted, the windows actually, as I studied it, the window heights are actually the same on these facades.
Yep.
So that one's shown one row lock up.
But we're on your screen, we're still looking at last week's presentation, correct?
Yes, this is
Okay.
last one.
Yeah.
Because we don't have any other information today.
Okay.
The drawings about the today. Do I have today?
If you go sharing the screen there with me, I fixed it a little bit, position center to, sign to the existing, columns over here.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I
Can I
couldn't,
share
it
this?
wasn't coming through very well.
Can I share the screen again and then
Sure.
try to explain?
Yep, let me do this. Let me get out of this. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, and then you see that over here? I center it and then
Nothing's up, nothing's up yet. You try sharing again.
good now.
Yeah, that's fine.
Over here, I center it, sign at
Yep.
the existing window. You can see the shade over here. And
Yep.
then I make it a better calculation about the bricks, and then put it all at the place.
Yep.
And then,
So my question,
excuse me.
Yep.
I put also that one, and between the windows. And then what we talked about last time, if you guys suggest that, and then now is everything almost perfectly centered.
okay. So the question then, Mehmet, is that we're talking about is that the height of the one on the Chestnut Street fits into the brick coursing in a certain way. We want the one on Great Plain Avenue to fit the same way.
Yes, they are same size, and then
Right, I know they are, but you're showing them one right on top of the window frame, and you're showing the other one, a couple bricks
Okay.
up.
yeah, when we install, we can do same height.
Yeah, so we're gonna note that in our approval.
Okay, I'll do corrections. Something like, I'll follow the bricks.
Well, we'll just make a notation in the review that tells you to do that, and you know what to do.
Okay.
So
All right.
And
Uh,
Mark, I walked by there today to take a closer look at the brick coursing as well. And in these images here, the big black bar, I think is where they used to hang stuff. That's
Yeah.
gone.
yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
Okay,
So it'll be clear. And I think a good note in the approval will clarify that.
right. So I guess I'm trying to get what would be the appropriate height here. So Bob, would you just say initially we had said above the roll-lock course over the windows as we discussed it last week? I think that's a good.
I think that works.
Okay, so we'll just have it set. So I would take that I would take a motion to approve facade B and facade C in the February 12th package with the conditions that the bottom of the sign sit on the, what's called the roll-lock course of brick on each facade.
So moved.
Second the motion.
And we come to the vote. Bob Dermody,
Yes, approve.
Steve Dornbush,
Yes,
and Susan Upton,
Approve.
and the chair approves. All right, thank you, Mehmet. Thanks for working with us.
Sir, question, what are we gonna do for entering sign? Are we doing, anything else? Just not through, can we put something on the window or side of the wall?
No. You can put, if you want to propose something, you can, but we did not approve that wall sign.
Okay, how about a couple of operation hours, can we put?
Well, that's an allowed, that's done a lot. So,
Or-
and if you
or-
have your name there as well, makes perfect sense.
Or we can take it off the open sign and then put over there, is it what you,
Anything beyond a little bit of, the name of the business with the opening hours underneath it on the doors, you need to come back to us. If you want to propose something up in that glass panel above, we're happy to look at it. But at this point, you said you didn't want to do that, and you only gave us the
yeah, but
option.
you guys didn't prove a sign and then now, can we discuss about, anything on the window, like a smaller proportion on the window, like an open sign area?
Well, as you can, if you stay for the next applicant, you'll see that we do review the window graphics. We approve all sorts of window graphics, but we don't, you need to show us something.
I can do
So we're-
everything over here, so, because,
I'm not gonna give a blank approval to something that we don't know what it is. Okay, I just can't do that.
yeah, but come back, it's wasting the time, so.
No, you want to waste our time if we're happy to look at it if you want to try that. So,
I can put it on over here on the window, over here right away, and then you guys can see.
yeah, well, show us what you
Okay.
come back to our next meeting and show us what you want to do in there, and we're happy to look at that. We think that's a good idea.
Right over here, like, are you guys seeing on the screen? Like something like that. Did you guys see?
Well, I think we're stepping beyond our ability to just approve a special permit on information that the public hasn't been able to look at before. So yes, we would certainly consider that, but we can't just accept things made up at the meetings that aren't more similar to what the original proposal was. So I'm sorry.
I'm stuck, I can tell nothing, whatever you say.
Well, if you want to add that to the package, we could continue again, and then we can review
I
that.
know, but, another month, that's,
Well, you know that we've approved the other two, so you're ready to go there.
I know, it's just, time is electronic time, so, we need to forward to fast.
Well, as I said, we've approved the other two signs, so you're good to go.
All right, sir, thank
You
you.
want to continue the special permit hearing to review this corner element? We can do that.
All right, let's see. Thank you very much.
So do you want us to continue that, or you just want to apply for that at another time?
I wanna install the sign there as soon as possible because they're gonna open the business.
Well, you can install the two street signs because they've been approved.
Okay, and then we can continue that one for winter, is that right?
Okay, so we will,
Do we need the permit for the window little sign?
if it's more than 2 square feet, you do. It's going to be more than 2 square feet.
Okay. Yeah, if it's okay to install the two side sign and then I wanna continue the, window sign,
Yeah.
we need that.
Yeah, okay. So
If I know you guys not proving, that, sign top of the, windows, and then why we came again to discuss this subject, I don't understand.
because we have public access requirements, so we can't sit here and just, we can modify to some level a sign and a location and some other things, but this is a totally new approach. And the public has not had a chance to be aware of that. We did not post this sort of information that said this is what was happening. And again, it is, if it is bigger than 2 square feet, it's a third sign, it requires a special permit. You've already started the special permit process. So my suggestion is that we continue you again while you put together the proper information for us to review this particular item. And then we'll look at it next week. It won't require you to notify abutters again. If we close this hearing and just on the denial of the upper sign, then you'll have to do notification again. So as I said, my suggestion is you continue the review for the special permit for that corner sign.
Is that gonna be next week, sir?
It's in, I think, I don't know what our next meeting is in a couple, our next meeting is Jan. Yeah.
I believe
Oh,
it's,
it isn't on here.
it's, March 4th, I think.
Yeah, we have a school vacation. Yeah, March 4th.
Yep.
But the other signs have been approved, so you're good to go there.
All right, thank you very much. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Right.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, so I'm going to move to the next item on the agenda. It's unclear where that was going to go. So we have Middlesex Savings Bank.
Hi. I'm Mark Mitchell with Middlesex Savings.
Hi.
How we doing?
Great.
Good, good. So we are looking to change, you got the package from Viewpoint Signage, I would assume.
Yes. Do you have it?
I was gonna say, is that something you could display for me? Because I'm
Sure.
having a little difficulty here.
Yeah, give me a second. Which package am I in here? I apologize, I'm just getting to this.
Oh, no worries. I apologize for not being able to have it up. Not at my computer.
Okay. Oh. There we go. Okay.
Okay. So we're in the middle of a pretty large renovation of this location, both interior, and we're working with the landlord to get the outside of the building prettied up and taken care of. And along with that, we're looking to change these 2 signs. These are older signs, been there from the beginning. They're 22 plus years old, and looking to the proposed signage that we're looking to put in are the It's actually a halo lit sign, not backlit. They're the halo lighting, same type of raised letters. This the sign right there. Instead of the gooseneck lighting.
Will the gooseneck lighting remain?
No, we were planning on taking that down and
Okay.
just the halo lit. Yeah.
So there's two of these, one over the angled entrance and one
On the
Chestnut Street.
yeah.
And there's nothing in the back?
There's nothing in the back now.
Okay. Okay, and in addition, then they want to do these row of window graphics.
Yeah, it's not the white like it looks there. It's that frosted, opaque type
Okay.
material.
That's kind of all of them. And that would be all three sides, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so yeah, I actually was at the bank the other day and saw somebody scraping off the old one. Looked like a lot of work. All right, so I will open it up to discussion. Steve?
I don't think I have any questions at the moment.
Okay. Susan?
The white banding on the glass, you said it's frosted glass or it's a decal, or is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Yeah. It looks like a frosted glass. It is a decal that goes over it, but it's that frosted look, not white as it comes out on here.
I see. I think they look very nice. I don't have any real comments
Okay, Bob?
or concerns.
We're approving the two big signs, Mark, and then all the decal quote unquote signs as well.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, no, I think it looks good. An improvement. I walked by there today as well. So it's just an improvement of the signs. I guess my only question is, and this is just more a curiosity question of the repetition of Middlesex Savings Bank in the white decal right under the big outdoor building. And I guess what's the theory behind that? Yeah, right there, Mark.
yeah.
So the repetition of
The name. So it says Middlesex Savings Bank up high above the
Yeah.
windows, and then it says it on the decal as well.
well, it was just really just a decorative element. There was no it's just and yeah, more of an element that we felt would carry through. Actually, what used to be there, if you looked at the smaller blue that we had there, it had Middlesex Savings Bank almost every foot along the whole way. This one's actually reducing the amount of the Middlesex Savings Bank.
Those letters are the Middlesex wording is 4 inches high, Bob.
Yeah. But does it not count as a second sign on the same
Well,
street?
that's why well, I think in these window graphics, I think if you took the area that 4 inches and it's
Yeah.
about 10 feet long. So does that add up to 2 square feet?
I'll have to do some math.
I have a calculator.
All right, I'm looking on my own monitor too, because I'm scrolling, and then that happens on the back, but on the back
Right,
it's
so-
only in the decal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that makes sense because that's a benefit, for the back parking lot. I guess it just, I don't know, it just seems a little repetitious to me.
Yeah.
Within how many feet you could see 3 different labels, and I'll be, full honesty, I did not recall the older ones, the smaller ones that you mentioned.
Yeah.
So that's my only question or comment. Otherwise, I think the new signs will be good. They're in good locations, so that's not a big deal.
Yeah, well, they're really just replacing.
Yeah.
Swapping out what's there with just a different style with the halo illumination versus the lit things. But I appreciate that they're removing the goosenecks at that point and not trying to double light the thing.
Yeah.
So that's good. All right. Who else? Steve, do you already, any other thoughts?
No, not at the moment. No,
Susan?
thank you.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that sort of pedestrian scale
Okay.
writing, mostly because if that upper one, if you're walking along that sidewalk, you wouldn't necessarily see that upper sign.
Yep. That's fine.
Certainly from a driving perspective or from this view, I agree with you. It is repetitive, but at 4 inches, and the fact that will actually be a frosted look behind there, that won't be white. So that there won't be as much background to what we're looking at. So
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with that, and I appreciate that they haven't tried to put another sign on the back that when that everybody's driven by the other ones and already know they're there. So I think it's useful for them on the backside.
Yes, I agree. That's fine. I just wanted to see if any of you others had the same reaction I did. That's fine.
Okay,
No, it all looks very clean to me.
okay. All right, so we really have no issues with any of the pieces, so I would take a motion to approve the 2 wall signs and the window graphics as submitted.
So moved.
Second the motion?
Okay, we come to the vote. Bob,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
and the chair approves. Go away, go away. There we go.
Very
Just
good.
like technology limits here tonight, people.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
very good. All right,
Thank
thank you
you.
for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And the next item is Blue Lotus, who are actually just proposing a projecting sign as a second sign. I will put that back up and let them speak to it. Let's come over here. So that sign.
Yes,
Okay, welcome. You want to just give us a brief overview of what you're doing, what you want to
Yes.
do?
thank you. My name is Kirsten Allen. My business partner is also here, Kathleen Krivak. We are seeking this blade sign specifically because our original sign is under the windows, as you can see, where our yoga studio is. And we're having many difficulties with students trying to find the front door. And so the second blade sign will be designated, yes, thank you for that picture, right by the entrance to the second floor. And we were prepared to do this in the fall, but we wanted to courteously wait as the 3 Crown Jeweler sign was coming down. And so our sign will actually be very similar to the 3 Crown Jeweler, if you're familiar with that store. And we've chose to just make it very simple, very clear logo, just our name, and of course the address, so that again, people can find our entrance.
Yeah, this was actually, to talk to the board for a second about the history here. We struggled working with Blue Lotus the very first time they wanted to install a sign, because their space is nowhere near their entrance. They're up on the second floor. There's one entrance to this building, which is in this image, the far right to the back of that pickup truck. And we really were trying to figure out ways to help them. And one of the things we suggested at the time was doing a wall-mounted sign. But in that era, you could not have both a wall-mounted and a projecting sign as a secondary sign. That's partly because of this. We did change the bylaw to allow a secondary projecting sign after you have a main sign, if it was a certain size. And I believe that they've followed that idea here. and are doing that now. So, you know, I'm actually pleased to see this. I think it's a great idea. It's always difficult when you're in an upstairs of a common building to get identified in a proper way. So, so this is, I'm happy to see this application. So I would
Thank you.
take any questions from Steve.
Uh, I'll assume the size is appropriate. That was just a question I had. And I can't tell, is there existing lighting there right now? Gooseneck lighting from the previous signage?
No, there is no lighting there.
Okay. I think it looks good.
Thank you.
Okay. Susan?
What is it hanging on? Is it that bracket there or?
Yeah, there's going to be you can see they propose a bracket.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yes, I think it looks lovely. I'm good with it.
Okay, Bob?
First of all, I want to compliment whoever put that slide together to explain where everything was. That was really helpful. I wish more applicants would tell us where tenants were and entrances. Yeah, that one. That gets a A+ in my book.
I was thinking that during that first application tonight.
Yeah. Sign looks great. I am a little concerned about the size. You know, because this is a blade sign, it's going to catch the wind. And I'm just a little concerned about that. It seems, I don't recall what the crown, you know, how big it was to the ground. If it's the same size, fine, but I'm just, you know, picturing here with my hands how 4 feet is, you know.
I can just tell you that Fast Signs is doing it according to the bylaws, and he told me that we might be a little bit smaller than the 3 Crown Jewelers sign.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
good to
it
hear.
is. Yeah, it would be, because 3 Crown was their only sign, and they're allowed a slightly larger area.
Okay. Then nothing further. Thank you.
Okay. As I said, I think this is a necessary and good idea for them, and something that was discussed when they couldn't do it. So pleased to see them adding this to the thing. I think it should be helpful. I think the one question is, it's not clear exactly where related to that arch it is. So I think I'd like to just make it a condition that it not be attached into this trim, but that it be on the, would be the.
It'll- In the brick section right outside that arch.
Okay,
I
great.
would suggest, Mark, maybe I'm looking at a Google map view right now, and
Okay.
there's a wider pilaster on the right side of the door of brick, like about 3 bricks wide, maybe 4. It could be centered in that.
Okay. I'm just gonna say center on brick pier on the right.
Yeah, because there's much less space on the left, so the right side I think is appropriate proposed location.
All right, so I would make a motion that we approve the Blue Lotus application with the condition that that it be mounted on the center of the brick pier to the right of the door.
So moved.
Second the motion?
Okay, and we come to the vote. Bob,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Susan.
Yes.
Okay, and the chair approves. All right, thank you. Good luck.
Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Be well.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And our last item on the agenda is Lee Newman. I spoke with Lee the other day about her timing and presentation, and she was very generous and offered to wait to the end so that we could have a discussion, because I think some of us know a little, some of us may know more or less about this. So I wanted to just be able to give her our full attention for as long as we needed to talk about it. So Lee, why don't you go ahead and take over if you'd like.
Okay, well, I'm gonna share my screen. Can you see that?
Not yet.
No?
It's still coming through the ether.
Don't know what's happening there then.
I've got it here if you don't want me to do it.
Well, I actually revised it, Mark, since
Okay.
when I showed it to you, I don't know what's going on here. Am I enabled?
Clay, can she screen share?
Yeah, you should have the ability to share. Check if there's a pop-up that is asking what you want to share.
There we go.
Okay. Oh, it's display. So I'm sorry. I had it all.
Hey, you saw me fumbling around, so it's only fair.
Okay, just. Okay, fine. Sorry about that. Technology is really wonderful when everything works and you look really professional when you're doing it, but it doesn't always turn out that way. So as Mark said, I wasn't sure how many of you had actually been engaged or involved in the whole process that we're going through in the town with the MBTA Communities Act. But I wanted to take this time to just kind of give you an update, give you some information on what the act is, and give you an update on where the town is and how we're processing this. And hopefully be able to engage you because we'd like your expertise or some of your advice as we start to develop design guidelines around the district actual implementation. When we begin to allow for housing to be built in different districts of Needham. We have design guidelines currently for Needham Center and for the Chestnut Street corridor, but for some of the other districts that are going to be affected by these changes, we don't have any articulated design guidelines, and it probably would be helpful if we had them. So when the zoning is implemented, it's clear what people's overall design vision is for those zoning changes. So I guess to begin with, start my first slide. So what is the MBTA Communities Act? It was an act that was passed. It's requiring that 177 towns across Massachusetts, provide for housing, which is basically housing as of right at a prescribed number. So in Needham's case, we are required to dedicate 50 acres of land for this purpose. That land has to be 90% of that land has to be located within a half a mile of transit. And we have a pretty high standard there because we have the 4 train stops. And we have to provide for, I think, 1,784 units at a density of 15 units per acre. And so to actually implement this, the town decided to create a committee that was going to oversee this work. And so they created the Home Committee, or the Needham Housing Needham Advisory Group. And it's made up of, it was appointed by the Select Board and the Planning Board, and it's made up of 2 members from the Select Board, 1 appointment from the Finance Committee, a real estate lawyer, a real estate developer, and a renter. And they have all been kind of shepherding the work for the committee. And the charge of the committee was to create a public process to engage the community in figuring out where they want the housing built, how the housing should be built, what the overall density should be, and to have a broad community process that brought a lot of people into the process to basically look at options and give the committee its perspective so that a solution that could be crafted that had broad community support. And this work, the foundational work for this didn't just start with Hone. This work started with the housing plan that was started basically back in 2021, which came up with a series of recommendations in terms of what the housing need was in Needham and where that housing might be built. And so the committee was directed to kind of use that as its foundation. And we effectively have until December of 2024 to come up with a plan. And the committee's work is to basically make a recommendation to the Select Board and the Planning Board in terms of what the town's strategy will be to actually implement the law. So the timeline to date the work began with the housing plan, which we started in October of 2021. And that was completed in January of 2023. And the town has been engaged with the state really since March of 2022. We commented, we were involved in commenting on the guidelines that were going to be implemented. And we actually applied for a grant to hire a consultant that's helping the committee. And so that's, and we received a grant actually of $60,000 for that purpose. And then the home committee was launched in September of this year. I don't know if any of you participated, but we've had 2 community meetings. One hand goes up. We had the first community meeting was in November. We just finished our second community meeting, which was in January. And right now, I'm here in front of you, giving you an update, and we're also updating the select board and the planning board this month on the work that the committee's done. So at the first workshop that we had, there was really a lot of participation. We had, I don't know if you must have received them. We sent postcards to every resident in Needham announcing them of this planning effort. At the first workshop, we had around 300 people, and we presented to them an overview of what the act was all about and engaged them in looking at alternative density scenarios across the different zoning districts that might be affected by these changes to gauge how much density or of development people might be supportive of. And it was surprising. I was actually surprised that there was quite a bit of support, although I don't know how much deep understanding there was of higher density development than what we're currently allowing in our zoning profile along the corridor itself. The second workshop, and this is where I'll go into more detail about what the plans were, also was well attended. And at this meeting, we actually presented 3 different development scenarios. I'll call them A, B, and C. And they're layered so that the first scenario was done basically at the level of just being compliant with the act. The second scenario was developed to be responsive and mirror what the housing plan recommended, which gave you a higher density. And then the third scenario was trying to be reflective of what people had said at the public meetings, which called for more density to be developed. And then we asked people 2 key questions. How would they feel about allowing standalone housing in Needham Center? How important was it for the community to maintain that first floor retail space? And the other question that got asked was, how would people feel about allowing greater density in the town's general residence districts, which currently only allow, 2 dwelling units per lot? Would people be supportive of increasing that to a higher number, 3 or 4? And there was a survey that was work that people could take at the time of the meeting or take after the meeting, and we received 595 responses.
So if
So
I
the-
could clarify a question, I think one of the issues that I've had is that overall, the committee's approach right now is to allow higher densities in other than in your question about general residence, only in zones like industrial, apartment, commercial that are already not single family residential zones. Is that right?
The different scenarios do different things. I would say the base scenario, that's absolutely true. The second scenario actually zones some areas for apartment that aren't currently zoned for apartment use. And does it basically at a density profile of 2.5 to 3 stories. And then the third scenario is more responsive to some of the comments the town heard from the community about 4 stories, 5-story profiles perhaps being appropriate in some of those districts. So this is actually the first scenario, Mark. And it is basically what you're talking about. This is a scenario that gets the town to 1,784 units. And essentially it takes the existing commercial districts, Chestnut Street business, the business district, the apartment districts, the industrial district located along Hillside Avenue, and targets the housing to be located in those areas. And effectively what's happening is the town is counting the areas in the orange where the existing apartment districts are that allow housing by right. Within Chestnut Street, housing is currently allowed by special permit. So we're just converting it to an as of right use. And in Avery Square, housing is allowed by special permit. So we're just converting it there to an as of right use. And then it's being introduced as a new use in the business district, which is the Sudbury Farms block across from the high school. And it's being introduced as a new use in the industrial district up by Crescent Road. And that is what the base proposal is. It tinkers a little with the density levers, but essentially it's keeping things within the range of 2.5 to 3 stories. And an FAR of between 0.5 and 0.7. Any questions? Oh. Okay,
I think we're with you.
okay, so I'll plug onto the next one.
I actually do have a question, and you might cover this in a moment, Lee, so forgive me if you get to it, but
Okay.
I'm just trying to, it sounds like a brilliant brain teaser puzzle, like you gotta have so many acres, so close to the MBTA at
Right.
such a height that achieves such a density.
That's right.
Okay, so looking at this diagram here, and I presume those circles are centered around the stations?
Yes, those circles are the half-mile radius around the stations.
But then, you know, a lot of those circles are still just our residential districts, it appears. We're focusing right along the Chestnut and Highland corridor.
We're focusing it really along the spine, although the third scenario, I mean, which is the third option I'll go through, actually looks at bringing general residents in and changing the zoning there. I think we modeled it at 4 units per lot.
All right, because full disclosure, I live inside one of those circles.
Okay, well, you're very lucky. You're walking distance to everything.
I walked uptown today.
So you're in a good spot. So I won't go through the details on this, but Mark, this was one of the slides I added. This is basically what the density profile looks like that was modeled with the all across all those districts, and what the FAR was that was modeled, and the height and the dwelling units per acre. And we actually, I think, in this one, we modeled the parking at 1 parking space per dwelling unit, which is lower than the town's current standard. But we have a recent study from Stantec and a study from the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, which is recommending that a reduced parking standard for multifamily housing based upon what the actual demand is across a number of studied sites. So the next one was scenario B. And this scenario and what it's showing really comes out of the recommendations that we had from the housing plan. Oops, sorry. And what it does is it adds in a portion of Needham Center. It adds in actually basically the Chestnut Street parking lot and the fire station property, allowing standalone housing there. And then as you go down Great Plain Avenue and past around the bank block, it basically allows also standalone housing and creates an apartment district. It also introduces apartment housing at Stephen Palmer and at St. Joe's Church. It introduces apartment housing moving up the corridor at the church block right by Rosemary Street. And then it introduces housing farther up the corridor, right around Hamilton Highlands, as an apartment district, which is all kind of recommended in the housing plan. And with that, the total acreage being modeled goes up to 186.7 acres. And this generates around 2,630 dwelling units. And in this profile, basically the density of 2.5 to 3 stories is being retained. What's happening is that you're expanding the areas where basically apartment A1 zoning is allowed. The table that goes along with that, was there. And then the next one was basically the C scenario. And the difference between this scenario and the second scenario is that it introduces it basically adds in the general residence district. So the general residence district, coming off of Maple and basically where the housing authority property is, it actually, I think, creates a general residence district over at this node on Great Plain Avenue. It actually introduced a general residence district along a portion of the Highland Avenue corridor, running from, I think, the library down to Morton Street. Also expanded general residence over in this area to actually add in those 4 units per acre, and then added a block farther down Highland Avenue. And this was modeled, and that's what's different between this particular model and I think in the earlier one. And this was modeled at what we heard from the community for some of the districts at much higher densities, at 4 stories and FARs that went from, I think, around a 1 to around a 1.5. And so this generated around 4,782 units.
Yeah, if I just take a second for Steve and Susan, who may not be as architecturally aware, when she talks about the general residence, that's what currently exists as a 2-family zone. So there's sections of Honeywell, Bobcat, Bobsled Drive, some of those streets along Hillside, those are and down on Maple. Those are all 2-family zones currently. And so they're talking about upping that to, instead of a 2-family house, to a triple decker or 4 units somehow.
That's what this proposal looked at, right? So then over the course of these 3 proposals, the first scenario, generated, which was basically just tinkering with, Needham's existing zoning, just kind of got the town to compliance at the 1,784. Looking with at what the housing plan recommended, we got to a little around 2,600 units. And then adding in general residence and really increasing the density profile in terms of height and FAR, got the town to 4,782 units. I think what the town or the committee is looking to do now in their process is to present the town meeting or the town with 2 different recommendations and let the town meeting decide what they want to do. So one alternative that will probably get presented at town meeting would be the base scenario, which basically achieves compliance without really changing much in terms of the overall urban design plan for the affected districts, but just introduces that use in 2 districts where it's not currently permitted. And then I think the committee is currently at stage now where it's trying to figure out a second add-on option, I'll call it, where the town could decide if they want to add capacity beyond that base through a separate article that would be presented, and which would probably have components of the housing plan embedded into it. And that would be a second option that the town could choose. So the town would have a choice whether or not it wanted to just do the 1,700 units or whether it wanted to do something above that, and then what the framework for that might look like. So where are we now? We're preparing now for the third workshop, which is going to be held on March the 28th. And I think that's where we're talking about presenting two plans. One would be this base plan that just meets compliance. And then on top of that, there would be added opportunities added for people to comment on. And for each of these plans, there will be a build out analysis. We'll have fiscal impact analysis and infrastructure analysis. Look at what the impacts are on the schools. There'll be an economic feasibility analysis because we need to determine the percentage of affordable units these opportunities will support. The state basically says to you that you can only have a 10% affordable threshold unless you demonstrate that it's economically feasible to have a higher percentage. Needham currently has 12.5, but we've have modeled it and done the economic analysis, and we feel that we can support that higher number. And then we're proposing to develop some 3D models. And so the timeline for this is really tight. We have to have all of this work done by December of this year. So the next community workshop is going to be in March. And we're hoping, and the plan is for the committee to finish its work during the month of April and to send the proposal off to the state in May. We want to send the zoning off to the state ahead of town meeting to make sure that they run it through their model and approve what we've done and indicate we're compliant before we go to town meeting and present it. And the state takes up to 90 days once you submit it to get back to you in terms of whether or not your model is totally compliant. So we're not going to hear back from them until probably sometime in August. So we're anticipating holding hearings on all of this in September, and it would go to a town meeting in October. So it's a really tight schedule. There's no room for errors in this schedule. So that's pretty much my update. I'm here to answer any questions and to hopefully engage you in as we start to develop the zoning and start to look at what are appropriate design guidelines for some of these districts that aren't covered under our existing design guideline framework.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. So I did send around the downtown design guidelines that we worked on, and I was participated in that several years ago. And they were pretty extensive, and the architectural team that worked for us developed a lot of sketches and some other things. I don't know that you're planning to do that kind of study here. I mean, you have a chunk of this is in place. But, you know, as I look at scenario B, for instance, I see industrial area, you know, the Hillside Ave, what changes there along West Street, along Honeywell, and you know, the sort of A1 zones over on May Street and Highland are a little different than the A1 zone along Great Plain Ave where the mobile station is. And I think there's a variety of things. Are you looking to be sort of uniform about the particular zone, or are you going to look into more specific corridors? I mean, there's just a lot of complexity here to me.
Well, I think what we were hoping to do was to get your input on, for example, I mean, we have the requirements, I guess, for the downtown and for the Chestnut Street corridor. Are some of those standards are appropriate to just be universally applied to some of these other districts? So, for example, are some of the base rules we have for Needham Center appropriate for Avery Square? Are some of the base rules that we have for, you know, for Chestnut Street, you know, appropriate for the business district along Highland Avenue? I mean, I guess what I'm looking at for is, do we have anything in our existing framework where we could say that the rules that we've kind of just established for that particular district is really very similar to what we want to see happen along these other areas?
Okay. Yeah, I think we would all need to read them more directly, because the design guidelines translated into some specific zoning requests, sort of like the 4-story in the town center had to be offset, things like that. But the design guidelines we're looking at it more from just kind of a general approach. But Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. This is really interesting. So you use the term base rule. Can you give a few examples of what those are and what might be a non-base rule? And my second question is, will the zoning article eventually that comes to town meeting be as detailed as setbacks and front yard, side yard height, those kinds of things?
Yes, the zoning is going to will be detailed relative to that. We're not,
Okay.
so it's going to have the setbacks, it's going to have the heights, it's going to have the FARs.
Okay.
All embedded in it. And in Chestnut Street, for example, it pretty much, under the base plan, it pretty much follows the zoning that's in place there now for the as of rights, for I call it the underlying zoning, which is not the overlay zoning. It's not really changing it. The foundational rules is just it's just changing a use from as of right to from special permit to as of right. And the same thing is true in Avery Square. I'm sorry, your other question was about,
like the base rules versus non-base rules. What's the difference?
well, I mean, we had prescriptive rules for Needham Center, and we had prescriptive rules for the Chestnut Street corridor in terms of how, where the building was supposed to be placed on the lot, that the parking was supposed to be behind the building.
Okay.
So I think there's probably some foundational rules there that are applicable that you'd want to see applied in Avery Square. You'd want to see, so I guess that's what I was asking. Are there any design? And the way it was done for Needham Center was that this document was developed about what the design objectives were. And then that document was referenced in the zoning itself. So you not only had the setbacks in zoning, you also had some information in terms of how the design was supposed to be implemented in terms of a vision.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. And where would you suggest we brush up on all of this? Where's a good place to start?
I think probably reviewing the existing design guidelines that we have currently. And then my sharing with you, I think, where the committee lands on these two options. They're very close to, so you understand, the zoning profile that's kind of been put in place and what districts are impacted. So they're very close to finalizing the base scenario. There's going to be some adjustments from what I've just shown you, and I can share that with you. And they're in the process of working out the details on what the other alternative is. So I think what I owe you is information on what's being proposed across those districts. So I'd like your input on, the heights and the setbacks and things we've settled on. And then on the design guidelines themselves for those districts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'd suggest we read the downtown study to see sort of how those kinds of parameters were set up for Chestnut Street and the center, and then take a look at the zoning map that exists of what these things are and see. I mean, you can read what the height limits and things are in that industrial section. When we worked on the business center study years ago, one of the things, the Wexford Street side of the street, one of the ideas, one of the concepts that we put together there was setting a higher minimum lot size so that all these little 7,000 square foot and 12,000 square foot lots, you really couldn't build much on them other than what was there.
Right.
So it was to encourage owners to buy each other out, consolidate properties and build a bigger, you got a big reward for doing that. You could build a lot bigger and do something more significant if you were able to do that. But, you know, and this haunts me every time I read these zoning studies now, is that that never happened. Nobody,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of these are small family cash cow properties. And so there was not a lot of consolidation. And when the MBTA law passed, that was also my first fear, was that, well, we can easily draw these circles and say, Bob, if I can buy you and 5 of your neighbors, then I can put up a little 3-story apartment building.
Hmm.
But that's an $8 million site acquisition cost, and now the project's unfeasible. So the fact that they're kind of working towards areas that already have some possibility for, some of them would still take, I think, parcel consolidation, Lee. I don't know if you guys have, how much you've talked about that, but there are also single owners. I know that along the properties along between Sudbury Farms and Eaton Funeral Home there is a consistent ownership through there for some of those properties that could potentially do something pretty well and nicely. But I would say, look at the zoning and get an understanding what base heights, and then look at that study and just picture that going up Highland Ave and on Hillside, whether those are appropriate. Or, I mean, there were different goals there, because Chestnut Street, there was a real effort to create a street front, so they kept the setback pretty small. It was encouraged to be closer to the street, but there is some setback. So once you get up into Hillside, you're sort of one side's the senior center, and another some apartment buildings and some small office buildings. But it's only one side of the street. So what happens as it relates to the other side of the street? What's appropriate? So I think just try and go through where these zones are and what the neighborhood around them is like and what we think might be appropriate. Because I do think that what they have in place is probably pretty easily applied all the way up through their current proposal along Highland. But I'm just going to take a second look to confirm that. And then we can give Lee some feedback either through another meeting, or a couple of us can meet with her and some of the committee members. That was sort of my thinking on it. I don't know what others have. I mean, this is all pretty new to us today.
And
Yeah,
I
that would
think
be helpful. I'm sorry.
I think it's a good suggestion. I feel like I got to do some reading, you know, before I really start getting into it.
Yeah.
I can share this. I had these. This has all the tables in it, at least where we are now on all the dimensionals. And I didn't go through it, but I also have in this table that what all the existing zoning is and what the overlay zoning is. So you can easily compare what the existing rules are against what's being proposed here.
Yeah, that was in the little Hone overview you sent, that I sent to everyone.
Okay.
A couple of tables. So I was starting to look at that. I was kind of comparing. Okay. So I think I said reading, and I'll do some email the committee about sort of thoughts and questions next week.
Okay, that would be helpful.
To look at it and see what their thoughts are as far as how to give you our best feedback. And to me, it's just there's a variety of options here, and in different areas, you might suggest different sort of solutions. I see the A1 seems the most complex. It's kind of in all sorts of different places, but that's not a bad thing. It's just it takes some thought from my standpoint.
Well, I think the A1, and I think in the first scenario, it's just really grabbing existing A1 built out districts. It's the second option that starts to expand it. And actually that according to the housing plan, and that was just basically recommending putting the existing A1 rules on those properties.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Lee, I guess, does the town or you have a preference between any of these? I mean, does the town want less or more, or just whatever the community wants? Is there an opinion?
I think it probably depends on who you talk to. I think there on the committee, there's a sense that we want to actually create zoning that's going to do something and is actually going to produce housing. And there's a concern that the base plan really doesn't get you there. I mean, it complies with the law, but we have a housing crisis, and is that really going to open up, new opportunities for development? So I think there's a desire to actually come in, to actually create zoning here that's going to go beyond what the foundation law requires. But as a policy strategy, because it's so important that the town secure compliance so we don't jeopardize our funding from the state, we've decided to present this as two options, or basically one base scenario and then another piece that sits on top of it. And I'm not quite sure how far that second piece will go, but there are properties out there that are probably would be redeveloped with the right incentives. I mean, 100 West, which is sitting vacant, the Carter Building, where we currently have the overlay zoning on it, which basically enables, assisted living kind of development, would probably be very appropriate for housing. And maybe there's an opportunity there to look at some higher density zoning, perhaps a 4-story profile building that would actually produce housing.
I see.
So I mean, I think on that second option, you're going to see some of those other properties perhaps brought into play. Because they're opportunities that will likely happen. And I think there are also some folks that own apartment developments that have indicated to us that if the density goes up, they're willing to think about redeveloping some of those apartment developments. So there might be some opportunities within the existing A1 district, if the densities go up, to enable redevelopment to happen there.
Okay.
I'm starting to get it.
Well, it's, you talk again, the parcel consolidation thing, which I'm probably beating to death, but you look at Chestnut Street near Costas, all those little building lots and buildings. It's not, under the current zoning, there's no reason to buy 3 of those properties beside each other and do something different. It just isn't, you can't do enough to justify it. But with, as Lee said, higher densities, a little more opportunity, then suddenly these start to happen a little bit. There are some places where it can happen because I personally, the state has been short of housing units ever since I lived here. I mean, Jack Cogswell used to harp on that for years, that we're 20 to 80,000 units short. When a house on my street sells for $2.5 million, I'm like, well, is that really? I mean, it's a nice little street, but come on.
Right.
So
I mean, that's the reason for the law, I think.
yeah, so I think this is a great effort. So I appreciate the committee's work on this, and we'll have some discussions, Lee, and get back to you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lee.
Thanks.
So a huge effort there, I think. But as you may remember, that Milton is voting tomorrow. Their town meeting passed some laws, and town members, some residents filed a petition to put it to vote for the whole town. So
That was very helpful, both as a Needham resident, but a town meeting member. I realized I have a lot of homework to do.
yeah.
And
So
was I correct in hearing that it does not change the affordable housing guidelines?
I think the state set a very low amount of affordable housing requirements to encourage the development. They just want how, they want units. They want.
Right.
They want more living units everywhere. That's their goal. From what everything I see about this. So that's what they're trying to do.
Well,
So, full disclosure here, I did do a lot of reading and still felt like I didn't understand anything.
That's
Um,
good. I'm glad.
I
they-
appreciate your honesty.
Thank you.
I read
felt
the
better.
design guidelines twice. I read this thing that she came with the packet, and it was very hard to read. I'm sort of a visual person, so I feel like I actually need to drive to these places and think about it, but I wasn't sure what I was supposed to think about.
Yeah.
Her explanation, I guess I didn't understand the foundation, that it's really about providing opportunities so people want to build something. It needs to be profitable, and so you have to change the zone, right? Like that's kind of underpinning what we're supposed to do, but I'm still not really sure what. I guess I did understand she'd like us to review, is it these design guidelines that you passed around to see if they can be universal to all the zones? I sort of could immediately say no, but
Right.
yeah.
So that would be the feedback is like, where might we extend these? And if there are places we don't. So I do think it'll take a little bit of homework. You know, there's some sort of isolated industrial areas. As you get up into the heights off Hillside on Webster and on, so they get, you know, and what, if you go and look at what is really actually there, there's just a bunch of single family houses.
Right.
So the zoning has changed for different reasons. So it's a tough thing. So it's going to take just some analysis to kind of slowly read through it. And again, unless they start to decide what they want to do where, it's going to be hard for us to give much more than some basic feedback about sort of conceptually, if you're up against single residence B, okay, one thing, if you're, which is the I'm sorry, it was just up the single family zone, that's all 10,000 square foot lots, how do you want to buffer that, and some of those ideas and what's appropriate. And at some point we have to kind of ignore what's actually there, because if it's just another single family residence neighborhood or a general residence neighborhood, and suddenly they want to go to 4-story or triple deckers, what kind of protections or what kind of options would you have to, it's mostly sort of to me, as I look at this, it's mostly what's the impact on the more adjacent areas, and how do you scale that up in a reasonable way without getting so overly complicated that it just, nothing can happen. So, but you know, there are a couple ways they can zone this. They can, and it sounds like they're leaning towards leaving the existing zoning areas intact. So where there's a business district and Needham Center District and the Chestnut Street corridor, they're just going to leave all those in place and change the regulations in each of them. The other thing they can do, which they've done before, which is basically an overlay district, where they say, we're going to draw a circle around all these different existing zoning things, industrial, apartment, neighborhood business districts. I mean, you have to know the zoning more to know the variety, but there are a lot of little zoning districts. And you just draw around a circle around and say, here are the regulations for those now. Certain FAR, which is basically the size of the square footage of the building related to the lot size. And yeah, and setbacks and height. And those are basically the base parameters of any building. So I mean, I don't know the answer. I'm not quite sure what we can tell them, but you know, they asked us to give it some thought. So I thought we could give it some thought and see. It might be more productive if, you know, 2 or 3 of us just went and met with 2 or 3 members of the committee and Lee, and had a discussion after we have a better sense of got a better grasp of what this is.
Yeah, I agree. I think this was a good start, though. I mean, I'm with Steve. I gotta catch up to Susan. I gotta do my homework.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would, that housing report is pretty big,
Yep.
but I will ask Alex Klee if she can get us all copies. And then we could at least, do some skimming of that and some comparisons, and because the effort here is really based on that work, and they worked for 2.5 years. So that was a much longer ability to study this and
Yeah.
make some recommendations. And they looked at a lot of the parameters of people, but there will be people that are going to just be dead no on this kind of thing because Needham's losing its rural community feel. Even though in my experience, it hasn't had that since I've been here. Okay, so let's get the last item on the agenda is the minutes from January 29th.
I don't know if I was,
You were not there.
oh, okay.
Okay, but I would take a motion. Any questions or comments
Nope.
on
Look good to me, so I'll move to accept.
Steve, you second?
I can second.
All right, do I come to the vote? Bob,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
and I approve also. Now we come to a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I second.
And come to the vote, Bob,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
and I am also yes.
All right. Good job,
Thanks,
Mark.
guys.
Thank you. Thank you. That was very
Thank you.
interesting.
Thank you for bringing that to us.
Stay warm and safe tomorrow.